special welcome to our home this evening. Those of you who have been listening in the last couple of days have heard that I think it was Tuesday I took a nap, and as I was beginning to fall asleep, the song "We Need a Little Christmas" right this very minute popped into my head. And it's not one that visits me very often. So I paid attention and I decided, we do need a little Christmas. We're all shut in. We all are stressed in one way or another. And I think it will be fun to have some Christmas songs, and perhaps you can sing along with them, or at least be taken back to one of the most happy times of most people's year, I should say. Anyway, I haven't decided even yet as to whether I'm doing individual songs or a medley, or perhaps several medleys. But in any case, it will be all Christmas music, and I have a nice Christmas story I'd like to tell in the middle of all of this. My wife gets a little nervous when I say I'm going to tell a story because it might take up the whole show. But anyway, as always, I have no idea what's going to happen. So I have a Christmas story to tell, and as my wife can very readily attest, I don't know how to tell a short story, but it's one that I treasure. It starts off with dogs. Um, when I was a very small child, we had a collie who was 10 years old when I was born, and she took me under her wing. I guess dogs don't have a wing, but she took me under her paws or whatever from the time I was able to walk. And she never left me when I was walking. In fact, my mother trusted her enough to let me go outside and walk up and down the block because she knew that the dog would push me away from the curb if I got anywhere near it. Well, anyway, as things happened, when the dog was 14 and I was 4, she died. And my father died around the same time, and I really got acquainted with that sort of thing pretty fast and pretty brutally, I would say, in some ways. But in any case, we moved out of the apartment that we lived in at the time because my mother just couldn't stay there. And we lived in a bunch of different places. And one time we were on the 3rd floor of a building up the street from where the family manse was, and somebody knew that I played the piano and that we didn't have one, and gave me their piano. And the movers came with it, and they spent probably 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out how to get it up there, and they couldn't. And so my acquaintance with the piano was going out into the truck and playing it on the moving van. And the moving men, my mother said, were standing outside the truck crying. And of course they charged her $18 to take it to the dump. And that was half a week's salary back then. But in any case, shortly before that happened, one of my aunts was watching a TV show in Boston, and of course everything was live then, and many of the shows were like 15 minutes long. And the show was about animals, and it was basically for children, about how to take care of animals and teaching them about various animals. And they said that they were running a contest, and the prize of the contest was a Sheltie dog, a miniature collie dog. And they encouraged parents of children or the children themselves to write in and say why they thought they should win the prize. And totally unbeknownst to me, my aunt wrote a letter, and she talked about how I had lost the dog and how much it had meant to me. And the end result was that I won the dog. Now they had another girl on who really deserved to win a dog. She was in the 4-H club, and she was, really into animals. And so we were both on television at the same time to receive our dogs. And so maybe a month afterward, the man from the show, I don't usually give out names on this program, but his name was John McFarlane, and he was one of the heads of Angel Memorial Hospital at the time in the 50s and stayed there for a long time. But he came down to visit us to see how we were managing with the dog, and he knew that I played the piano, and he was in our home and we didn't have one, so we went to my grandmother's down the street, and I played for him, and he said, "I want you to come on my show again, and I want you to play the piano." And he said, "You have to bring the dog because this is a show about animals." So I went on the show, and I played I Believe and some other things, 2 other things, I guess. And at the end of the show, he said, which came as a complete surprise, certainly to me, and I think even to my mother, he told the story about how somebody had tried to give us a piano and it wouldn't fit in the house. And he said, if anybody out there has a small piano that they could imagine this little boy loving, get in touch with me and I'll come and look at it and I'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. So that was a surprise. And then several weeks later, he called and said, I want you to come on the show. We're doing a special Christmas show. And we want you to play some Christmas music. So went back on, and in the studio was this beautiful little piano. It had 73 keys instead of 88, but it had a very sweet sound. And the dog sat on the top of the piano, and at the end of my playing, he said, I wonder if you could show us how you read Braille. And he gave me this card, and I opened it and I read aloud, David Crohan, this is your piano. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and people, of course, watched it on television. And I got the piano, and I had it for many, many years. I outgrew it. I had to get a bigger one eventually because I just needed a full keyboard. But I left it, I gave it to, or maybe she bought it, I don't remember, but it stayed with a close friend of our family for many, many years. And I think it's a beautiful Christmas story, and you didn't have much choice about it, but thank you for letting me share it with you. Now I think we'll do some of the beautiful carols, the sacred music, with some of them a little lighter, but from that era. one more story. When I was at Perkins, the school for the blind that I attended from kindergarten through high school, we had Christmas concerts every year, and we would do 3 in a week. Of course, all the same music. And I've spoken before about how incredible it was. The older I get, the more incredible I think it was that us kids, most of whom were more or less unwilling to be in the chorus, learned very complicated music. We learned much of the Messiah. We learned a Mozart Mass. We learned just piece after piece after piece, and we had to learn it and sing it from memory. And we had a conductor, but most of us couldn't see him. And the whole thing, looking back on it, was just almost miraculous, I think. Well, anyway, in the middle of the Christmas concert, they would lower the lights, complete darkness. On a Monday of the week of the Christmas concerts, my oldest brother, John, came to see me at Perkins, and it was unheard of for that to happen. They strongly discouraged family members from visiting. So when he came into my room, I thought some calamity had happened. But he came to tell me that my other brother, Bob, who had been in Italy for a couple of years in the army, was coming home, hopefully within a week or 10 days. Well, at the Christmas concert, when we were in this most somber of moments with the humming, there was this god-awful clang of, must have been, it sounded like at least a dozen or 15 coins falling on the wood floor of the hall. And I said to myself, that's Bobby. That's Bobby. I know it's him. And when I came down from the place, there he was. And we were riding home, and he said, I don't think I'll ever be as embarrassed as I was tonight when all those coins fell out of my pocket. I didn't know I had a hole in my pocket, and out they fell. And I still think today it was a signal. And I love that story. Hope you do too. I think we've had enough of Christmas for this fine night. How about, I have no idea. Christmas. I had fun. I hope you did. See you tomorrow. Singing tomorrow. Croaking tomorrow. Well, hopefully not croaking tomorrow. Good night, everybody.